The tragic tale of the Batavia, 1629. In June 1629, the Dutch East India Company ship Batavia wrecked on a coral reef off the coast of Western Australia during its maiden voyage. What followed was a story of survival and horror so shocking that it became one of history's most infamous maritime disasters. This is the story of how greed, mutiny, and madness turned a shipwreck into a bloody saga of human cruelty. The wreck. The Batavia was a magnificent vessel carrying 341 passengers and crew, including soldiers, merchants, women, and children. It was en route to the Dutch East Indies, modern-day Indonesia, laden with silver coins and valuable trade goods. The journey, however, was fraught with tension. On board, the ship's commander, Francisco Pelsart, clashed bitterly with the second-in-command, Geronimus Cornelis, a charismatic but deeply malevolent man. Cornelis, an apothecary turned VOC, Dutch East India Company, officer, was already plotting to seize the ship and its treasure. On the night of June 4, disaster struck. The Batavia, sailing blind through treacherous waters, struck a coral reef at full speed. Chaos erupted as the ship began to break apart. Passengers screamed and scrambled in the darkness, some jumping into the sea in a desperate bid to reach safety. By dawn, the survivors had managed to abandon the sinking ship and reach nearby Beacon Island, a barren, windswept sandbar. The survival struggle. The island offered little hope. It was desolate, with no fresh water and sparse vegetation. Pelsart, along with a small group of sailors, took a longboat and set off on a perilous 33-day journey to Batavia, modern Jakarta, to seek help, leaving the survivors in Cornelis's charge. Initially, Cornelis feigned leadership, organizing the survivors into groups and rationing supplies. But his intentions were anything but noble. With Pelsart gone, Cornelis saw an opportunity to enact his mutinous plans. He declared himself ruler of the stranded group, recruited loyal followers, and began consolidating power. The descent into madness. Cornelis's reign quickly turned tyrannical. He hoarded what little food and water remained, ensuring loyalty through starvation. Those who opposed him were brutally executed. With no Dutch authority to challenge him, he and his followers began systematically murdering survivors to conserve resources and eliminate threats. Over the course of several weeks, Cornelis and his band of mutineers massacred nearly 120 men, women, and children. Women were enslaved, forced into servitude, or subjected to unspeakable abuse. Survivors who managed to escape fled to nearby islands, where they lived in constant fear of discovery. The revolt. Not everyone submitted to Cornelis's rule. A group of soldiers led by Weeb Hayes resisted his tyranny. They escaped to another island and established a stronghold. Despite being poorly armed, they managed to repel several attacks by Cornelis's men, using improvised weapons and sheer determination. Hayes and his followers managed to capture several mutineers and executed them, gradually turning the tide against Cornelis's forces. To the rescue. Unbeknownst to the survivors, Pelsart had reached Batavia and returned with a rescue fleet. Upon his arrival, he was met with scenes of unimaginable horror. The beaches were littered with the remains of victims, and the survivors' faces were gaunt with starvation and terror. Cornelis and his followers were quickly apprehended. Under interrogation, they confessed to their crimes in chilling detail. Justice was swift and brutal. Cornelis and his chief conspirators were executed on the islands, their severed hands nailed to posts as a grim warning. Others were taken back to Batavia for trial and punishment. Out of 341 people aboard the Batavia, fewer than 120 survived. The incident exposed the darker side of human nature, where greed and power can flourish even in the most desperate circumstances. Beacon Island, forever marked by the tragedy, became known as Batavia's graveyard. The Batavia wreck itself was rediscovered in the 20th century, and its artifacts now serve as a reminder of this horrifying chapter in maritime history. Among the items recovered were silver coins, cannon, and remnants of the ship itself, now displayed in Australian and Dutch museums. The Batavia Shipwreck remains one of the most chilling examples of survival gone awry and the cruelty of some humans.